I'm Joshua Freedman, the CEO of 6 Seconds, the world's largest organization for emotional intelligence. For over 2 decades, we've been bringing emotional intelligence tools and strategies to the world, and I want to share that with you. After hundreds of times of doing it not quite right, I finally figured out how to talk to business leaders about emotional intelligence and make the business case for EQ. And so I'm going to share that with you in this video. First, I'm going to tell you about what I was doing wrong, and then a super simple way to show business leaders and engage them in building the case for emotional intelligence. One of the biggest challenges that I hear from people who want to do emotional intelligence work in business is they say, I don't really know how to sell this. And very often they say, I don't like sales. I have come to love sales because selling isn't about giving people information and pushing them. It's about giving them a structure to help them solve their challenges and being their ally in finding a solution. Starting back at the beginning of the 2000s, I was frequently asked to make a presentation on the business case for emotional intelligence. And at first, what I would do is go and share the latest case studies. We have all these fascinating cases about how we used emotional intelligence for leadership at FedEx, or how we built team engagement at Komatsu, or how the team in Latin America at Siemens was able to build a strong team despite a difficult, even toxic business environment. What the mistake I made when I was making these presentations is I was giving people data. And it was good data, and I think I'm okay at presenting that data, but it wasn't what they were really needing. So when somebody says to you, what's the business case for emotional intelligence? It's not really about the data that they're looking for. What they're really looking for is to connect the dots. And not just the dots about business in general. I mean, there's all these interesting reasons why emotional intelligence is needed in business. We have rapid and accelerating change. We have a lot of turnover. We need people to be engaged and innovative and problem solving and risk taking. We need people to work across boundaries. And all of that calls for emotional intelligence. It's why the World Economic Forum has identified emotional intelligence as one of the top skills needed in the workplace of the future. And in fact, if you look at all of the skills they've identified, most of them have to do with being aware of and working with emotions. But when you talk to a group of business leaders and they say to you, let's talk about the business case, what they really mean is what's happening here. So, what I've come up with is this incredibly simple slide, and I've used variations on this slide dozens of times, and I want to give it to you now for your next presentation. Here's how it works. There are 4 dots. The first is performance, and you just ask them, how would you know in your organization if performance was high? What is success? What are the indicators? In business, it might be top line growth and bottom line achievement. It might be faster cycle times. It might be more customer satisfaction and loyalty. In healthcare, it might be more people staying alive. In education, it might be more kids going into and completing college. So depending on the context, ask them to identify and just write down some of the measures of success. And then everybody has customers in all sectors, internally and externally. So the question is, what do customers need to experience in order to achieve that success? What are some things that customers will need to feel? What are some things they'll need to know? What are some things they're going to need to do? And again, in every sector, people are going to be able to make a list, put these on Post-its, put it on a flip chart, type it onto an electronic whiteboard. Then we get to one of my favorite parts of this, which is for customers to experience that, what do people inside the organization need to experience? And I often at this point mention the research on emotional contagion. There's a ton of data showing that what employees are experiencing emotionally is going to be automatically and almost instantaneously transmitted to the customers. You can have great systems. You can be a hotel with the softest sheets in the world. But if somebody at the front desk is rude, that's what the customer is going to remember. So yes, infrastructure, patents, technology, it's all going to help with the customer experience. But if the human interaction isn't good, it's going to destroy the customer experience. So what do employees need to experience? And then we back up to the last step. For employees to experience that, what is it that leaders are going to need to be good at? And they'll make a list. They'll identify things like communication, problem solving. Ask them how the leaders need to feel if they're going to transmit those emotions to the employees who are going to transmit them to the customers who are going to create value. And they'll say things like supported, innovative, trusted, and trusting. And ask them what those leaders need to do, and they'll say things like listen and solve problems and engage people and talk and hear and speak to the vision and stay focused. Now, if they're not already doing this, here's the magic trick question. You say, on the people side, what do those leaders need? And this people side, it just immediately takes business leaders into talking about what we call emotional intelligence, whether they know that term or not. This is when they're going to start talking about those internal and relational factors that are going to make this value chain work. Then you can ask, what of those things that we've put up on the wall here do you see as related to emotional intelligence? And you'll find that it's not all emotional intelligence, but a lot of it is. And so then you can say, well, this is why I focus on emotional intelligence development, because these are the underlying internal skills that everybody in the organization is going to need to make this value chain work. And we can measure it at every level. And there are a ton of case studies about this if you want to learn more. Here's the URL. And people nod their heads and they go, oh, I get it. You didn't need to give them all the data. You needed to help them connect the dots between those leadership capacities, the employee experience, the customer experience, and value creation. And then just give them the backup, give them the assurance. We have a lot of data that supports this, and we can measure this at every stage of the way, and we can see the impact of emotional intelligence, going from emotional intelligence for leadership to organizational climate to customer experience to value creation. And if you want to work on that value chain, we have a set of learnable, measurable, scientifically grounded skills that we can infuse into your organization, starting with the people in this room. And by the way, in those case studies, you'll find that just a few hours of training makes a significant difference in people's performance. If you found this helpful, subscribe to the channel, because we're starting a new series and we're going to give you lots of tools for how to build your practice as somebody bringing emotional intelligence into the workplace.